All right. So we're talking about the autonomous structure method today, one of my favorite things to dive into. And I tend to, when I teach and share, go really quickly and sometimes a little complicated because it's just firing really fast in my brain. So the frameworks that I'm going to share with you today are overly simplified on purpose because I wanted to find a really easy way to explain the concept of what is important to understand. And I'm also going to show you in this training how to integrate this with everything that we've talked about so far with the unicorn team, and really that concept of ownership and how to empower team members on your unicorn team to take ownership and to be able to help drive the business forward, drive the vision forward, and all of those good things. So, super excited to dive in. Some of our client case study results of the hundreds and thousands of businesses, no exaggeration, that we have installed the unicorn team method in various ways, and that I've used working with teams is we've seen clients who have gone from 60-hour work weeks in those stage 1 to 2, stage 2 to 3, down to 3-day work schedule with no more than 5 hours of work a day. And so it wasn't about decreasing tasks or killing projects or cutting things out of the objectives. It was more about streamlining and really looking at through the filter of who's the unicorn team that's helping to own the key strategic initiatives, like we talked about in that one pager yesterday. And on a very tactical sense, how do they use autonomous structure method to go about integrating and executing all of that? Another one of my proud case studies, they were able to successfully hire and install department leads. And we'll talk about what the 5 departments are and how I categorize those in just a bit. And that allowed their CEO to then have space to find that small hinge that swung the big door of doubling their business. And I find that that is often the case. I think a lot of times visionizers get caught up with wanting to fully own and close the loop and see through to completion things that the mobilizer and the strategizer can run, maybe not to the level of perfection that the visionizer first thought of when they had this idea, or this grand plan that they came up with, but that could be done and it gets the results of what that initial idea was sparking and doing. And that, for example, let's say that the visionizer has an idea, this particular visionizer had an idea of they were launching an app in their company, and they wanted the app to achieve XYZ types of functionalities, right? It was going to provide this type of information and connect them with potential new clients and provide resources and support for their community in this app. And I told them, I said, Kate, you've done enough of the ideating where a strategizer and a mobilizer now needs to take this over. The mobilizer needs to finish out the building of it, and the strategizer needs to think about how they're going to market this when it launches and goes live. And they were like, yeah, but I still don't feel like it has a full functionality. And I want this cool, innovative tech. And I want to add these functions and these bells and whistles and so on and so forth. And I want it to be able to scale and be able to be the first searchable thing that's searched when you go to the App Store. And I said, that's great. That's really great. And you don't need to keep hanging on to the strategizer and mobilizer's jobs until that whole level of scale and fruition comes to pass for this idea you have. There's enough for you to release it. And I know that they were fighting me on this. And I get that this is emotionally painful for you, but there's enough here that the strategizer and the mobilizer can move this forward.
I have to say something about this.
Yes.
So I want to remind you all that an old white man gave us all permission to put out technology and processes imperfectly. His name's Bill Gates. And when he built Microsoft, he was like, let's send out broken stuff and teach the audience to accept that. And it hasn't killed anyone. And it's so interesting to me that women don't approach it the same way, yet he's a billionaire and we're over here trying to figure out how not to be emotional. I'm just saying, permission to not do it perfect. Train your people.
Yes.
How to consume what you do in a way that both people win. Okay. You just, this example of I want it first on the app store and blah, 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 blah. We have even a client who has like a New York Times bestseller. And honestly, how they did that was they've been talking about the book for 2 years, right? Guess what I'm doing right now? I'm talking about my book, right? But you don't have the book yet. I don't. I hope you want it because I keep talking about it, right? So I'm just letting you know that what Sarah's sharing, this is the kind of reframe that we help them see, and to do it in a feminine way without giving up our ambition and our want for getting rich. Like
100%.
So anyway, I just need to say that. Do what Bill Gates would do. Yes. Do what Bill Gates would do.
And so in the process of all of this, we went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, right? And I think that that's what Jen was talking about yesterday. Don't reinvent the frameworks that we have. Just use them. Just get support doing it, depending on what stage you're in and that type of support. Because without that dialogue, I know for a fact that client would have just spent all of their time obsessed with these markers. And I'm like, it's good enough to move forward for now. We need you thinking about not filling your days being on with the dev team and fixing the latest bug and looking at the font sizes of this and feeling through the graphics. We need you available for bigger things. And they went on to close $1 million in revenue that year because they released the things to their strategizer and mobilizer. They stayed abreast of the high level conversations, and they went and they networked in the right rooms that ended up being where the funding came from for not just the app, but for all the other parts of the organization as well. So that's an example of using the unicorn team and the very practical implementation part of the autonomous structure method. It provided a space for us to reframe and train the team on what they needed to be looking at. Another one of our clients hired their first full-time mobilizer, who then helped her take her company from mid 6 figures to 7 figures in 12 months. And this was like 6 to 12 months earlier than projection. We thought it would take 18 to 24 months, but she really she understood the filter. She brought in her mobilizer. She had the mobilizer trained by Jen and I. I use autonomous structure method with the mobilizer to be like, okay, this is where you're looking at. Here's what we're cranking for. Here's what we're looking at. And boom, things started to just flow more, which left the visionizer in her pocket to be able to see the opportunities, to have the right conversations, to create the presentations and the webinars and the programming that really helped move forward the revenue number that they wanted to hit. And then finally, this one is the one I love the most. Multiple of our CEOs have had space opened up for them to pursue passion projects that they had put on the shelf up until that point. Thinking back to the VOW matrix, the AEIOU time matrix, the things that they really saw as bigger opportunities and that they enjoy doing, we put time on there. And I think it's this conversation of what I'm about to talk about with you in using the autonomous structure method in your business on a practical sense of how can you really make that happen for yourself. I'm sure if I asked all of you all here, those of you who are watching the replay, hi, by the way, to my replay people, I always like to give a special shout out because I'm a huge replay consumer. So I see you. And one thing that I really like to always drive home is I ask the visionizers all the time, why are you working so hard to be miserable? Why are you working? Nobody got into business to work this hard to be miserable in your business. This is not what you signed up for. And you're the only person that has the control to fix that. You are the only person who has the control to fix that. And you can choose really where and how you are building your business in alignment with your values. If your top value is not micromanaging details, I don't think anybody watching replay or on here will say that. I think most of you will raise your hand that one of these markers is you, that one of these, maybe not specifically, but you have your own variation of these case study results that you want to see. Even if it's, I'm stage 1 and I want to get to stage 2 so that I don't have to be the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker, that I can get that level of support. Nobody is saying, I want to just sit here and do the thing I've always done and have it be terrible and hard and stressful and all these things that I've carried. So then the next logical question that I have to ask is, why are you continuing to choose into doing it on your own and doing the same things that have gotten you to this point? There's space for change, there's space for growth, and you get to model that as a visionizer to your full unicorn team and all of the contractors and employees that work for you. So sometimes people ask, where do I focus in my business? How do I start all of these things? Going back to who's supposed to be, who owns what pieces, the whole VSM unicorn team model sounds amazing. I wouldn't even know where to begin. I think I might have a person. I don't know if I have a person. I have a person, but this person is not good at ABC. So then I have this person and they're great at A, B, and C, but they suck at X, Y, Z. And there's this whole consternation that we kind of just float through, because as a visionizer, you're seeing all aspects of the business, past, present, and future at the same time in any given moment in whatever perspective is coming through your mind. That's just how you're built. This is constant flow, okay? That's not how strategizers and mobilizers are built. The strategizer is like, what are the gaps? How do we solve them in the best way possible so that we can win? And the mobilizer is, what do we have to get done and what's stopping us from getting it done? Because I don't know why we can't just check it off, right? The visionizer is holding all of the ethos of all of the things that are happening. And so I created this framework in the autonomous structure method, the abbreviation is comms on purpose, like communications, because these are the only 5 departments and the only way that you would ever need to sort anything. There are a lot of complex ways out in other people's entrepreneurial systems or operations-based systems that are out there, accountability charts and departments, and then, organization and hierarchy and all these departments with sub-departments. It's really complex. It doesn't apply to everyone. Comms does. And so the way that this works is 5 departments and areas of focus: client services, operations, marketing, management, and sales. Okay. So client services, very simply, is the work you do for someone after they pay you. After they pay you, okay, keyword. Operations is all the things that support finances, legal, HR, those kinds of things in your company, that infrastructure. Marketing, the strategies, messaging, and tactics that you use to get more eyeballs on your business to generate more leads. Management is the team members and the systems that help you stay on track and accountable for timeline and performance. And sales is the conversation, strategies, and systems in place that help you take your those eyeballs on your business and convert them into paying clients. Okay, so COMMS. I've tried to do a very light treatment of how the unicorn team generally tends to integrate in each of these departments in terms of owners or co-owners. Take that with a grain of salt because every company is different. But in general, what I've seen is client services tends to be owned by the visionizer, meaning it's their intellectual property. It's their unique way of creating transformation and results for clients. And it's often co-owned by the mobilizer. So for example, in this case, CEO Circle is a program that Jen and I have. I'm going to use this as an example because it's really easy to show how we've structured our business. And so the owner of CEO Circle and the vision thereof in the past has largely been Jen, a space for CEOs to come together to get facilitated consulting that takes the best practices of corporate, that takes the unicorn team model, our many frameworks that we have, and helps them know exactly which ones to implement and how. Okay. It was co-owned by myself as the mobilizer, meaning just because Jen has this vision for this program doesn't mean that she's the one contacting people, adding them to Slack, making sure their calls get scheduled, making sure they get access to the replays, making sure that the slides are organized in order to present to them, yada, yada, yada. That's owned by the mobilizer. So generally, client services are co-owned by the visionizer and what they see they want to do in the market to support people who are paying them, and the mobilizer who's handling a lot of that administrative part and the flow. If you remember yesterday when we talked about delivering superior experience on our 1-page strategic plan that we taught, that whole thing about how do you make it more efficient? How do you have internal frameworks that show how we deliver the work? How do you make the process better? All of those things are under this particular bucket here. Okay. The second one, operations, all the things that support the finances, legal, and people in your company. This is owned solely by the mobilizer first, but also supported by the visionizer. We talked about this a lot yesterday, how the mobilizer is responsible for making sure that the KPIs, the key performance indicators, are created and that they're implemented on time and that they're done with the right quality. And also, Jen talked about this a lot yesterday. The co-owner is obviously the visionizer in charge of all the things, paying payroll, for example, and all of those pieces that come with how the company shows up and is operating in the world, that it's a healthy company, so on and so forth. In the marketing side, when we talk about strategies, messaging, and tactics that you use to get more eyeballs on your business, it is owned by the strategizer. So this is your marketing person. What I have found historically is in the beginning stages, if you're bringing on a strategizer, even as a part-time contractor, because that's generally how you ease into hiring a strategizer, they tend to have one core competency in marketing that they're really, really, really good at. Okay. And they also have a great grasp of how the other pieces of marketing that are not their specialty all play together. They have to meet both of those criteria in order to fit even the label of potential strategizer. So what do I mean by that? For example, you have a copywriter who's really great at writing copy, who also understands a little bit about how paid advertising works, how funnels work, how to use PR and things that you have that show your authority, media features in the copy that they're writing, how landing pages and sales pages convert into potential clients booking time with you to figure out how to work with you, right? One core competency. They might not be an expert at all the things. I haven't met anybody besides Jen Kim who's an expert at all the things. So most likely, just to set realistic expectations for you, they will have one thing and they'll know how it all integrates. Another example of that could be you have someone who's really great at media buying, okay, paid ads and strategies, but they also know how good copy, what good copy is like, how the funnel should work in terms of leading people to sales page. They understand what graphics look like so that it's not ugly and unappealing to your potential client. They understand how your PR features, also your media features, need to be used in paid advertising, and so on and so forth. Okay, so it's every strategizer that I've run across that we vetted has one core competency of doing something really, really, really well in a marketing skill set, at least one. And they are also able to see that they are not the end all be all, and that there's other pieces of marketing that play together. That type of person is the best person to be a part-time strategizer for you in the beginning. And eventually, should this person grow and progress with the company, they become able to oversee all of your individual contractors, the one who's doing PR, the one who's doing paid advertising, the copywriter, the graphic designer. They're able to QA at quality assurance and look at all of the work that's being delivered and say, this will help us reach our goals that we have in improving financial performance. Think back to the strategic one page, right? These contractors will help us kind of get there. It would be nice. I think Jen can speak to this as well, but we looked a long time to try to find one person who could embody all of the things. And it was just, we spent a lot of money testing it. Let's just put it that way. So trust me when I tell you, this is a most likely scenario that you're going to get if you're looking for a strategizer. What that can also mean for you is that if you have someone on your team already who is really good at one core competency in marketing, like they really excel, they're amazing at maybe organic social reels that create traffic or visibility, or maybe they're really good at creating sales pages and building those for you, that person potentially could be the one that you take to mentor and to bring up through the unicorn team method of giving them more and more responsibilities gradually over time to see if they become your strategizer, right? It's much more easier to mold the strategizer, I think, and to mentor the strategizer, as opposed to a mobilizer. You just really need to find someone who's organized and competent and bring them on. And yes, they need mentorship too, but it's a lot easier to find potential mobilizers out there, potential Sarahs out there, than it is to find potential Gen Chems. Okay, let me just make that analogy. That's kind of how I look at it. And the co-owner for marketing is also the visionizer, because you don't want to just hire an agency and be like, here's what I'd like to do. Okay, let's pretend I hired an agency and I said, I am looking for 10 values-driven business owners that are really excited about me getting in there and helping to mentor and shape their business using the unicorn team model and to mentor their team. So I don't care what you do, just market it and go for it. That's not how that works, right? We don't want them just writing any old thing we have to think about the overall brand. We have to think about Jen's brand voice. We have to think about what we stand for, our values, how we would do it, what we know to be true about our ideal client in the stages of business that the agency probably doesn't have any idea around. And even if they do, they might be translating differently how they would speak and reach out to them. And we have to be involved in that level of also co-owning with the strategizer how we want marketing campaigns, launches, things like that to go out. So that's a really important piece. Okay, management. I broke this out separate from operations because I see a lot of people bundle the two together. They assume just because you're good at ops, like checklisty things, finances, numbers, systems, structures, that also means that you're good at leading a team to have the team be accountable to get the work done in a timely fashion. Those are two different skills. Ideally, your mobilizer has both, but it's two different skill sets. And that's why I broke it out separately, because I have a whole different series of protocols and templates that we use for managing humans than I do for like running P&L reports from QuickBooks, right? Anybody can check off all the things and do the tasks and set up organizational structure and manage the business that way. When you add in the component of humans, other humans that you're overseeing and supporting and checking their work and getting it done and making sure that everyone is understanding all the bits and pieces and communicating back and forth, that's a separate skill. Okay, so management is its own type of bucket here. Oh, typo. Sorry about that. That is co-owned by the mobilizer and the strategizer. And the reason for that is the mobilizer obviously needs to lead the team and help people to stay on track and things like that. But the strategizer also needs to help inform what the order of priorities are. When the work comes back, did it meet the criteria of what quality of work we wanted? When the clients go through the program and they finish on the other side, did they get the results that were promising in the offer, and so on and so forth? And so there's this nice duo that happens in tandem between the mobilizer and the strategizer. And then finally, sales. So making the money, the conversions, moving people into becoming paying clients. Generally, I have seen it's either owned by the visionizer and or co-owned by the strategizer. So they've got this synchronicity happening there where they're communicating the value of the work that's being done and why people should invest with them as the resource to do that. If you are in stage one and you are wearing all of the hats, it's almost like it can feel a little bit like, well, the fact that you're distinguishing who the visionizer, mobilizer, and strategizer is in the departments doesn't really apply to me. I guess it's fair to say because you are owning multiple things, all the things. I think it's really important, therefore, that you are taking time out on your calendar, that it's blocked out for these separate areas that you're focusing on in your company so that you're sure that the vision is growing, but that also you have space to wear the different hats, mobilizer, visionizer, strategizer, to execute on what needs to get done. One of the hacks that I saw someone do that I really, really like is they actually have different atmospheres that they're in, depending at that stage. In the stage one they'll go to their office. If they're going to do at the computer for mobilizer work, they'll take their laptop and sit outside or go to a co-working space when they're doing strategizer work. And then they'll just be out in nature when it's visionizer work. That's an extreme version of finding something that helps you switch hats. But I thought that was really cool and a creative way to express it. So don't be afraid to play with what works for you, depending on what stage you are. And also once you have that part-time mobilizer, even that you're reading them into the same structure that you're using so that they're really clear what roles they're playing, what their hat means when they're in their pockets, and that it helps them also prioritize and make better decisions about the work that they're doing. Okay. So we have a 3-step ritual that we use that helps to create compounded momentum, because I went through a lot just now, a lot. It can feel like, oh my God, I don't even know where to start. There's just like all of these things plus a strategic one-page plan. Plus now I'm thinking about my value matrix and so on and so forth. And I know building a business is complicated, can feel complicated. And so I always like to bring back to this very simple 3-step process of whatever your bucket you're in. You've set aside time for client services, and you're sitting there and you're like, okay, I got an hour blocked out for client delivery. Now what? Right? Or you have time set aside to work on your marketing plans. And you're like, okay, I have 45 minutes today to work on my marketing plan. Then I have 45 minutes tomorrow. And then I have 3 hours on Sunday. So now what? Right? The curse of the blinking cursor on the blank page. Where do I begin? And so there's a very simple 3-step process that I always like to return to help with that. Step 1 is to organize. Just pulling everything all into one place. The vowel matrix that we just did of the AEIOU time things, that's a great example of organizing. You're just brain dumping all into one space. If you're not regularly doing that step to organize by brain dumping and pulling everything together, you're probably forgetting things. You're probably missing deadlines. You're probably waking up at 2 a.m. randomly and going, shoot, I did it XYZ, right? It's probably you're driving to the gym and you realize, oh, shoot, I forgot something else, one or the other. And it can make you feel very scattered. And when you're feeling that way as a visionizer, it begins to harm your confidence. So step 1 is always organizing, really sitting down and brain dumping. What are the actions that I do on a regular basis with pretty good accuracy that are just not organized and or always feel like they're all over the place? This is very, very, very powerful. And I think sometimes we skip this because we think, oh, I know it all somewhere in here. It's somewhere in here. It's somewhere. I got it somewhere, but this is a very key step that helps visionizers and mobilizers get on the same page together. Step 2, amplify. What things do I know that will grow the company, but I've been putting them off because I just don't have a good flow and or the space to get a clear picture of what executing it would look like. Those things, honestly, in your vowel matrix will probably show up in the opportunity part. It might show up in the avoiding part. It might show up in the important things, but really looking at if I wanted to do something that I know will help move the needle forward to grow, to amplify the work that I'm doing, what's that? And my philosophy is once you pulled everything together and you figured out what the things are to amplify, everything else can be released. Okay. Everything else can be released. And by released, I don't necessarily mean that you have to throw it all away. You can if you want to, but released as in not putting pressure on yourself in that moment to try to do all the things. And I think that's really, really key. Only looking at what are the right hard things to focus on in this moment and who are the people on my team that can help me organize this a little bit better, that can help me amplify these things that are strategic, that can help me with the things that I know that I need to release. And so it creates this momentum: organize, amplify, release, organize, amplify, release, organize, amplify, release. And whatever you're working on, whether you're working on sales conversions, whether you're working on things for operations, whether you're managing things, just really getting into that cadence can help your flow and to create that space for you to really have time to process. So one of the things that I know is it's easier to see what we don't like than it is to see what we do want, especially if you're a visionizer. That's usually easier to name right now. If I asked you in this moment to name something, if I asked you to name, what do you want? What do you want to do? It's much easier for you to say, well, I don't like this and this and this, and I would like this, but I can't because of this, this, and this, right? And so if you've ever find yourself overthinking, making things more complicated than they need to be, procrastinating, redoing things over the same thing over and over because you're waiting for the day that you get it perfect before you launch it or you have someone else take it. You're hiring and firing contractors and team members on a rapid basis, trying to find a magical person who can delegate everything to and who will just get you and read your mind. If you're ever feeling really frustrated, like you're all over the place and that no one understands you, or you feel that like, I don't know how I could ever bring someone on to help me with this or turn this into a framework that's repeated by my team because nobody can be as good as it as I am. I don't even know how I'm as good as it. That's not true. What's happening is you're not taking the time to organize, amplify, release, organize, amplify, release. And therefore things are feeling super jumbled that way. The key to a successful business is to have a great team. We've talked a whole 2 days about this, right? The way to create a great unicorn team is through leadership. the key to leadership is clear communication. And so that's what makes this really effective as a way that you can get that support that people like Jen and I bring, where we come in and we install this and we help to regulate some of the chaos that's happening. And it's one of my favorite things to do. In fact, it made it, Jen, on my enjoying list, client calls and supporting them through our frameworks. It's a delight of
Wow.
mine. Surprising,
There was
right?
a time, remember yesterday's story where I mentioned that we killed a $2 million business line. That would not have been on our enjoy list then.
No,
But
definitely
wow,
not.
the money was so delicious,
It
y'all.
was so good. It was so easy, and it was
It was so easy to make
it was
money. And I was
unlocked.
like, but then we would ask ourselves after we'd have client calls, do we like these people and do we like ourselves after? And the answer was always no.
Yes.
And
Do we
so
believe that they're delivering on what they're saying? I don't know. This is getting a little sketch, Jen. I don't think I can back this in integrity.
yeah,
Just
she'd be
because they
like,
want us.
are we helping fakers build their businesses? Is this really what we
100%.
want to do? And I'm like,
100%.
no.
No.
So be brave with what you're willing to tolerate. Be brave with your values. So that's exciting
Yes.
that it's back on your list.
I know. I was very happy when I wrote it down. I was like, ooh, love it. You know, the other thing that I put on my list is helping our clients create their own frameworks internally so that their team can embody the things that they do and move it forward. Because I do a lot of that in CEO Circle, and it makes me so happy to see the team members going, oh, I get it. I know now. Because I know that feeling. That's the same thing that when we really built our frameworks together, I know that was the biggest marker for me as a mobilizer to grow in. My hands down. I love it. I love that look in their face.
Well, I actually want to mention that because I know like yesterday we talked about like, obviously all of you have different offers, business models, that type of thing. And I didn't realize this was actually ignorance on my part when I was starting out, that the things that I knew that I thought people knew. Like I was like, what do you mean that your ops team doesn't create the process for you? And they're like, well, they do, but then nobody knows how to keep up with them and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, that's weird, right? What frameworks are you using? They're like, frameworks. Well, we've got to hire a consultant to do that. And I'm like, okay, sure. But no one writes frameworks in your business. And they're like, no. And I'm like, oh, okay. So it's a game changer when you have our core structure and then you build a few of in Sarah's comms, this autonomous structure method, like across the departments, what frameworks for your business would fit under those that would actually move the needle forward. It's a game changer. So,
you know, I was calculating it. I think we've done like 135 frameworks that we've built for companies in VIP days in the past 2.5 years. Isn't that crazy? But it's amazing. Like all of the intellectual property that's there that just once it's distilled out and how quickly the team can take it and run, you know, so good. So good.